My Lamborghini was almost towed by fake cops right in my own neighborhood. No warning, no real authority. The shocking truth? The orders came from my next-door neighbor, Judge Helen Whitmore, abusing her power to bully residents for appearances. But I wasn't about to let this slide. What happened next completely flipped the script. Just wait until you hear how justice finally caught up and fairness won in the end. I never imagined I'd have to fight for my Lamborghini in the very neighborhood I call home. My name's Jason Miller, a software engineer who's worked hard to enjoy the finer things in life. I live in Willow Creek, a quiet, upscale gated community where everything is supposed to run smoothly and peacefully. For years, I believed that once you get here, problems like harassment or injustice simply don't happen. But that afternoon shattered all my assumptions. I had just stepped out for a quick coffee run. The sun was warm, the streets calm, and my bright yellow Lamborghini, parked right in front of my house, was glistening in the light. I was humming a tune, already looking forward to that first sip of espresso. Then I saw them. Two men in uniforms were standing next to my Lamborghini, which was already hooked up to a tow truck. My stomach dropped. They wore dark uniforms that looked official at first glance, but something felt off. No badges, no real IDs, just generic patches stitched onto their sleeves. They told me they were from the HOA, enforcing towing for parking violations, but I hadn't received a single warning or notice. I stood there, frozen in disbelief. "Wait, what? Who gave you permission?" I asked, my voice steady but my mind racing. They ignored me and told me to move along. They had orders to tow the car immediately. My heart sank. This car wasn't just a flashy ride. It was the culmination of years of relentless work and sacrifices, a symbol of everything I had built. And now, strangers, who weren't even real officers, were trying to take it away. Desperation set in. I pulled out my phone and called the real HOA office. A calm voice on the other end told me flat out, "We didn't send anyone. That's not our policy." I was left staring at the tow truck driver, hooking up my Lamborghini with trembling hands. Who were these imposters? What did they want? Why target me? In that moment, the neighborhood I thought I knew suddenly felt strange and unsafe. I realized this was more than a parking dispute. It was something much darker, and I was right in the middle of it. I couldn't just let this slide. That day, after the shock wore off, I decided to dig deeper, to understand who was really behind this brazen attempt to tow my Lamborghini. What I uncovered was more unbelievable than I ever imagined. The towing warrants, the official paperwork authorizing the removal of my car, were signed by none other than Helen Whitmore. Helen wasn't just any resident, she was the judge living right next door to me. For years, she'd been a respected figure in the community, serving on the HOA board with a reputation for being tough but fair. Or so I thought. At first, I simply refused to believe it. How could a sitting judge, someone sworn to uphold justice, misuse her power like this? Was it even legal? But the evidence was clear. Helen had quietly been backing the HOA's aggressive tactics to clean up the neighborhood, a thinly veiled campaign aimed at flashy cars like mine. According to her, cars like mine were disruptive, detracting from the neighborhood's image, and therefore needed to be removed, no matter the cost. It hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about parking rules or community standards. It was a calculated effort by someone in power to bully residents and control appearances through fear and intimidation. The very person I'd smiled at during neighborhood events was behind this scheme, and suddenly I felt something I hadn't expected: hatred. Not just toward the fake cops who tried to tow my car, but toward the corrupt system operating right next door, a system that abused its authority to silence and punish anyone who didn't fit its narrow idea of perfect. It was no longer about a car or a parking ticket. It was personal, and I knew I couldn't back down. I wasn't about to let them get away with this, not my Lamborghini, and not the principle of fairness in my own neighborhood. Once the initial shock and betrayal settled, a fire lit inside me, a fierce resolve to expose the corruption and fight back with everything I had. I started gathering proof, piece by piece. I recorded videos of those so-called HOA officers, 2 men in cheap uniforms, no badges, no legitimate identification. I collected copies of the towing warrants signed by Helen Whitmore, documents that should never have existed. I spoke to neighbors, many who had quietly suffered similar intimidation but were too afraid or unsure to speak up. Armed with this growing mountain of evidence, I filed a formal complaint with the city. I demanded a public hearing, insisting the truth come out in the open. I even reached out to local reporters, hoping the media attention would shine a spotlight on the judge's shadowy tactics. The neighborhood was buzzing. Whispers and rumors flew as word spread that someone was finally standing up to the powerful judge and her secretive HOA maneuvers. Many neighbors confided they felt a mix of relief and fear. Relief that the silence was breaking. Fear of the fallout. Then came the hearing, the moment I'd been preparing for. Face to face with Helen Whitmore, I laid out everything. The fake officers caught on camera, the forged warrants, the testimonies from residents. Helen tried to keep her composure, attempting to justify her actions as necessary for the neighborhood's well-being. But the truth was undeniable. The fake officers, a private towing company she had hired without the HOA board's approval, acting under her direct secret orders. In that room, the judge's mask slipped, revealing the real story behind the polished facade. It was a battle for justice, and I was ready to see it through. In the end, justice finally found its way through the cracks of corruption. The judge, Helen Whitmore, was forced to step down from the HOA board, her reputation publicly tarnished by the formal reprimand for abusing her judicial power to intimidate and control residents. The fake towing operation, the one that nearly stole my Lamborghini, was immediately shut down, erased like a bad chapter from our neighborhood story. My car, that bright yellow symbol of years of dedication and hard work, was declared off limits from any further harassment. No more fake cops, no more shadowy threats hanging over it. But this victory went beyond just protecting my car. The HOA was ordered to completely overhaul their enforcement policies, introducing new transparency measures and clear rules to prevent such abuses from ever happening again. The community breathed a collective sigh of relief, knowing that fairness was restored, not just for me, but for every resident in Willow Creek. Now, every time I drive my Lamborghini through the quiet streets of our upscale neighborhood, it feels different. It's no longer just a luxury vehicle. It's a symbol of resilience, of standing up to corruption when no one else would. Every gleam of that yellow paint reminds me how close I came to losing more than just a car. I almost lost my faith in justice, but in the end, fairness won. And that's a feeling I'll carry with me every time I hit the accelerator.